Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. Many temples, it's just the opposite. Everyone comes except the temple president. Here in Vrindavan, we have temple presidents always here. Back when Prabhupada was here, same thing was going on. Of course, the leaders, older devotees, they wouldn't come. And Prabhupada wrote a letter and he said, "You are very advanced." He said, "You don't need to be coming." He said, "But you should come to set an example for the others." Of course, in another 2 days, we have Purushottama month coming. Well, it's a good time that we all get our scheduling together. I myself am also working on that schedule, trying to come to Mangal Artik, and as my god sister was reminding me, Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada gave Pradyumna the Shila to worship. He explained a very simple way to take care of the Shila. But then didn't see him at class, whereas Pradyumna, he was doing his puja. Prabhupada said, no, not you. Go get him, come to class. One of the first things before I became Prabhupada's servant was, again, observing, always observing. You have to see what was going on. So it was before me, his servant. He was with him for a year and a half. He had come, I guess, in 1970, 1969. Prabhupada said he was expert. But one morning, Prabhupada didn't see him at class in the morning, Srimad Bhagavatam class in Los Angeles. And after class, Prabhupada would go up those stairs, we call it the old temple room in Los Angeles. And Prabhupada would walk up the stairs. So again, Kuladri and I, we were with Kirtanananda Swami. We were getting our Brahmin initiation. It was May 1972. So I had literally been in the temple for 1 year. So that was the policy then. 3 months, you could get first initiation. Then after a year, you could get Brahmin initiation. Your Gayatri Mantra. So we were there in Los Angeles. So that one morning we went up to Prabhupada, we followed him up the stairs. In the sitting room, Prabhupada sat down, and as he did a few times, actually noted 3 times before I was Prabhupada's servant, he saw me and he asked me what my name was, and each time I couldn't respond. That's how I just couldn't open my mouth. And 2 of those times, all 3 of the times, Kirtananda said, "That's Sruta Kirti." Sruta Kirti Das. Oh, very nice brahmachari. You'd always say, nice brahmachari. So we were up there talking, and then Nanda Kumar came in with the plates, Prabhupada's breakfast. After class was breakfast, every day. And as soon as he walked in the door, Prabhupada, "Where were you at class?" And I'm sitting there, never thinking I would be in this same position, exact same position as Nanda Kumar. "Where were you at class?" "I was preparing your breakfast." He looked at him. "Anyone can cut up fruits," he said, in the kitchen. He said, "Your business is to be at class." When you were with Prabhupada, your business was to hopefully absorb as much of Prabhupada's association as possible. So there was no question of being somewhere else. 2.5 years, I never missed the class. May not heard very well, but I was always sitting right there trying to be attentive, because you just couldn't think of doing anything else. And the morning walk was the same way. If you were with him, you had to be on the morning walk. He wanted you around them all the time. So Yes, this is our business in the temple. In Los Angeles, he chastised. It was the Grahasta community, just like we have the MVT over there, so many apartments. That same thing was there in Los Angeles. Temple was on one side of the street. Across the street, there were 3 apartment complexes, probably around the same, almost 100 apartments. And Prabhupada said, everyone should eat in the temple. He said, no one should be preparing foodstuffs separately, wasting time, he said. And everyone should be at the program in the temple. He said, the deities are there in the temple. He said, not that you have to have deity worship in your house. He said, you have to support the temple. This is this most beautiful temple here in Vrindavan. I'm going to speak a little bit today about Juhu, the story about Juhu Temple that I know. And this temple, there were the 2 places. From the time I came with Srila Prabhupada, over those 2.5 years, half of it he spent in India. Now imagine, Prabhupada's mission was to bring Krishna consciousness to the West. But while I was with him, some 2 years, 1 year was here in India. And half of that was in Juhu, to ensure that the temple would be built there on that land that was purchased. And here in Vrindavan, it was to manage every facet of what was going on here, every doorway. He would look at the doors, and if he didn't like, he would complain and say how to make adjustments to it. So we're most fortunate people to be here in Vrindavan in Prabhupada's temple. We mentioned yesterday, your question yesterday, I actually looked it up, the familiarity breeds contempt. It was first recorded, it said, in a Chaucer, I think, anyways, one story. But I looked up the meaning, which we all know, we have the idea what it is, but it said very specifically, when you're with someone a long time, you start to see their faults. You start to see they're just like everyone else. For me, being with Prabhupada, again, what saved me is I didn't have very big intelligence, you know. I wasn't able to see things and think, oh, like or some of these Sanskrit scholars did. You know, they would start to find fault in the way Prabhupada was translating. Imagine, Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad-Gita, they would say, oh, this word should be this should be this. And of course, Prabhupada said, it was coming directly from Krishna. He told me in his room when he was reading, Krishna is in every word. He said, if somebody picks up a book, he said, if they just pick it up, their life has changed, their life is successful. He said, what to speak if they read something within that book? Because it's not different than Krishna. But this was the defect in people that were with Prabhupada for months and sometimes years. They would start to see things. The one thing I could say that would have affected me was his yelling at me, you know, finding my faults and pointing them out. That can become difficult after a time. But fortunately, Prabhupada was also very merciful and compassionate and had common sense. I've even seen with my godbrothers, sometimes I see them with their servants, and I've said, you know, give the guy a break. Because all you do is yell at him. I said Prabhupada could have done that with me all the time, but he didn't, because you have to allow someone to do their service, especially on a personal level. I said I saw Prabhupada chastise people in one day. There's his name Surabi here, 6 times coming into the room every hour. He would say, get Surab, get Surab. Every time I get him, he'd just bang him over the head about what was going on. And he was perfectly able to take it. He never felt offended in any way. He would just shake, yes, Prabhupada, and then he would go out and transfer that chastisement to the others, you know. But he was able to tolerate it. Prabhupada knew he couldn't do that to his personal servant who was with him 24 hours a day. Like I said, he pointed out, he would point things out once, then that was it. Would never bring up again. I mentioned this many times in classes. Once Prabhupada chastised you about something you had done, like in Los Angeles. Beautiful temple room. The deities were in Rukmini, Dwarkadish, Jagannath, Subhadra, Baladev, Gaurnitai on the altar. And the Jagannath were on the right side. It was a beautiful temple room. And then after traveling for 6 months, Prabhupada came back and the whole temple room had moved to what was the auditorium, where they had the pews in it. You know, the pews they call the long chairs like you have in the churches. And there was the stage and a platform and the pulpit. And Prabhupada, when he was there in 73, he said, this is wonderful. He said, the people, anyone can come in from outside and sit down. He said, they don't even have to remove their shoes because it wasn't the temple. So he was making so many allowances for the Westerners. He said, you can come here, and Prabhupada would give lectures from there. And they had beautiful stained glass windows, 20 feet high, 10 feet wide. Prabhupada came in one day, and that was the temple room. It was beautiful. They had the paintings that were done by one devotee, forget his name, big, massive paintings on the ceiling, different pastimes. All those windows were gone. All the pews were gone. The floor was laid down. Altars were there. Prabhupada was furious. He said, what have you done? And it was maybe a little bit bigger. It wasn't even like it was 5 times the size. It was a little bit bigger. But Prabhupada wasn't happy. But he did his chastisement right then, right there to the GBC, to the temple president, and he never brought it up again. Just went to the temple every day, offered obeisances to the deities, gave class, had Guru Puja, never brought it up again. This is intelligence. This is a devotee. You're always encouraged. He lets you know what you did, but then you should just understand. So this familiarity I've seen, seeing yourself is difficult. I've seen with others the struggles they went through. And I've seen people go away, literally go away. We were mentioning, of course, Nitai. He didn't come to classes. He was going outside, hearing from others. He said, Prabhupada, he said, these classes in this temple, people are not very intelligent, not very advanced. Prabhupada said, then you give the class. You're so advanced, and you sit and give the class. He said, but don't hear from anyone outside. You could see, I saw with myself, Prabhupada would give advice. He would see you as you were drifting away in your Krishna consciousness, as Maya was, she would come in very slowly, very sneakily. But then once she grabbed you, that's what we say, right? There's the throwing, boom, and then he was gone, just like that, disappeared. And others, by making offenses to the pure devotee. Prabhupada said, no one. He said, none of my god brothers were qualified to spread Krishna consciousness. He said they couldn't, as I mentioned yesterday, he said, no one's in their temples. He said, just widows come for the festivals, that's all. He said, otherwise no one is in the temples. He said, no one was qualified. He gave out one speech. He said to his disciples, my spiritual master, he said, only within India, he said, he spread Krishna consciousness. He said, I've done double, triple, 10 times what my spiritual master did. He said, now you have to do more than what I have done. This was Prabhupada's encouragement. We can think if we can do one little thing to try to maintain what Srila Prabhupada's given us, maintain these temples, understand the fortune we have to be here for Krishna Balaram, Gaur Nitai, Radhashama Sundar. Always look Panchagoda always says when we sit there, we just sit here and do kirtan in front of Krishna Balaram. How lucky, how fortunate are we? These deities, Prabhupada turned a smile on his face. I saw that smile different times. The first time I saw that smile like that was in a, what's it called, festival, Cross Maidan Festival. This was the second Cross Maidan Festival. This was in the end of 1972, December 1972. Same thing, 1 week. And for that festival, Prabhupada had brought the Radha Krishna deities. These deities were destined to go to England, the Bhaktivedanta manor. But at the time, they were just a backdrop on a small altar on the stage. And every day, Prabhupada would speak. One day, the rented electrical equipment went on fire. There was like a fire burning around. A lot happened with these deities. So then Prabhupada spoke every day for a week. And all the devotees in India were there. Of course, Guru Das, Jamuna, Malati, Shamasundar, Pradyumna, Chutananda, Swami, and so many others. So we were all up on the stage each day, and Prabhupada would speak in Hindi. And then they would have kirtan most every night. Chutananda, he led the kirtans. They're always so powerful, so wonderful. And Prabhupada would sit on the Vyasasana. So then the last night came. Prabhupada spoke, and there's 10,000 people in the pandal, in the audience. And after the lecture, Achutananda standing at the microphone, kirtan's going on. I'm sitting on the floor, right by Srila Prabhupada's Vyasasana. And then Prabhupada looked and he got up. And then he went right in the middle of the stage, in front of the deities, about towards the audience part, but right in front of the deities, and he just looked at Radha Krishna, and he bowed, and then he started walking around to circumambulate the deities. So he went around once, and then he stopped before them, and he bowed, and turned to this 360. So he did that 3 times. And each time he's going around, he's getting a little more, raising his hands. And the devotees just seeing Prabhupada do anything other than sitting on the Vyasasana. Just having him sit on the Vyasasana was enough. Everyone's in ecstasy. But when he would get up, do anything, this was so unusual. They were rare occasions. So then he went around to the 3rd time, and he bowed before the deities, and then he just turned, and he raised his arms, and he had that smile, that ecstatic smile on his face, and he started jumping up and down, dancing before everyone. Now you see, in 10,000 people, he raised, we say he raised the roof, we say in English. Prabhupada raised the roof. Everyone was dancing. What to speak of the devotees on the stage? They're all in ecstasy, laughing, crying, jumping as high as they could, and Prabhupada's doing that amazing jumping up and down, dancing, and he had everyone. He just put everyone into ecstasy. And he's dancing. Everyone's dancing. There's 50 devotees, 40 or so devotees on the stage. Everyone's dancing on this rented stage. And then Jamuna and I, we were close by, close to each other in many ways. We were close. And we see Radha Krishna, and they're dancing too. They were bobbing around back and forth on the altar. So we both ran to the altar, and we grabbed them by their lotus feet, and we held them down while Prabhupada was dancing. Then gradually the kirtan died down. And then afterwards, We got into the car, Brahmananda, myself, Shyamasundar, myself, and Prabhupada was in the back seat, Prabhupada and I. And Prabhupada, you could hear Prabhupada was in ecstasy. He was always in ecstasy, but then ecstasy has its levels as well. And its exposure. And sometimes Prabhupada exposed some ecstasies. And he looked at us, he said, "So?" He said, "It was nice." And of course, he said, "Yes, Prabhupada." I said, "When you're dancing," I said, everyone, you put everyone in ecstasy. He said, "Yes." He said, "I would have kept on dancing." He said, "But I could see the deities." He said, "They were shaking on the stage." So he said, "I stopped." So that was December 1972. So 6 months later, Prabhupada's installing those same deities, very same deities. He's doing a deity installation, Bhaktivedanta manner. And you see the video. You see that black and white small checkered floor that became the deity room, the altar. It was all glass behind. They put curtains up behind. And there, Prabhupada, of course, he did the first artik. And after he finished the artik, what happened? He went and stood before these same deities, and he bowed, and then he started walking. He did the same thing he had done 6 months before with this Radha Krishna deity. Same thing. Went around Gokulananda, right? Radha Gokulananda. Went around 3 times. Each time, everything Prabhupada did was just so beautiful. Each time he'd stop, turn, then he'd dance. Then he came around the 3rd time, and he turned, had that big, ecstatic smile on his face and started jumping up and down, just like he had done 6 months before. He was in ecstasy. So this is our fortune. We get to dance before these deities. Or not dance if you're too old. We get to raise our arms and jump up and down by Srila Prabhupada's mercy. And Prabhupada took advantage as much as possible every day. He set the example. One reason to. Jai Shishi. Nitai Gaur Radhe Shyam Jai Krishna Balaram. You say familiarity. See, these were the things you couldn't find fault in Srila Prabhupada. In order to find fault, you had to be filled with so many faults to look for something, some defect. How could you find fault? Because all I saw is this person 24 hours a day trying to deliver the entire world, engaged in Krishna conscious activities from morning till night, saying, "I hate sleep." And then he would lie down very peacefully and take rest. A little nap in the afternoon, like he said to me, when you're old, he said, you can't sleep too much at any one time. He said, so I take a nap after lunch. That nap was 20 minutes, half an hour. In the morning, midnight, I would wake up to his translating, 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. I would be that close. I could hear him speaking into the dictaphone machine. That was my good fortune. Even in sleeping, those transcendental sound vibrations were there. So, after this festival, Cross Maidan festival, that was like in December, then Prabhupada went to, and one of the reasons he would be there in Bombay and Juhu, staying at Kartikeya Mahadeva's place there in Bombay, there was no facility anywhere. There were no flats in Juhu at the time, where he later stayed in the end of 73, 74, and 75. So he stayed at Kartikeya's place. He was there so much time because he was ensuring that we didn't lose the property, those 3 acres or so of land, that precious land 1 block away from the ocean in Juhu, a fishing village. No one was there, nothing was going on there. The city was an hour away, Mumbai. Bombay was an hour away, but Prabhupada purchased that land from Mr. Nair. And then there was nothing but trouble. Mr. Nair trying to steal it back like he had done previously, previous buyers. They would give a small down payment or a big down payment. Then through his lawyers, he finagled these ways that they would lose the property. But then he sold it to Prabhupada. He had no idea what he was doing. He thought he was thought he had another, we say, anyway, thought he had another person he could con. So many cons in this material world, con men. But Prabhupada purchased it, and of course, what did he do? Immediately, you build a place, and he put Radharasa Bahari on that tiny little altar, the little deity room. There was nothing, a tin roof, corrugated tin roof, half the size, a third of the size of this area here. And then there was the area for the devotees, a small area where they would chant. And Prabhupada established himself there, giving classes there right away. But of course we know in India this is what you do. As soon as you get property, you put the deities on the property. That's what Prabhupada did. But it was horrible facility. But Prabhupada promised them their lordships. He said, you come stay here, I'll build a very beautiful temple. Prabhupada would stay there for months. Just a handful of devotees were there. But he was always having to tell them how to deal with this Mr. Nair. We were children, even our best people. They were gradually beaten down by this Mr. Nair and his antics. They were saying to Prabhupada, let's just get something else. So after being there in Bombay, then Prabhupada took a trip to Australia. He went to New Zealand first. So one of the first temple presidents in Juhu was Tushta Krishna. He became later Tushta Krishna Maharaj, Siddha Sarup Maharaj. I told you Prabhupada had them travel with him so they could understand the philosophy. They traveled all in this trip, October, November, December, all through India, Kartik and Vrindavan, Hyderabad Festival, Ahmedabad Festival, Cross Maidan Festival, one after another. Prabhupada was doing these festivals in India now. This person whose mission was to give Krishna consciousness all around the world, now he targeted India. He said that was my desire, my service. He decided on his own. After Rukmini Dwarkadish told him, you go to India. He said they told him, and kept telling him. He said, no, my mission is here. He said, you go to India, open up a temple. So then he did that. So now he's in New Zealand. They had a house there that was a temple. They didn't have deities, just worshiping picture of Gaur Nitai. There were a handful of devotees that they removed from the temple while Prabhupada stayed there for some days. We never saw any other devotees. It was a very unique situation, what had happened. Anyway, Prabhupada spent his days with Tushta Krishna and Siddha Sarup, again, just giving him his association so that they could understand the philosophy. He knew what the future would bring. There would be factions, it would become separate. Didn't matter as long as they presented the philosophy properly. That was the most important thing, that they understood how to give Krishna consciousness. Even when he took prasadam, evening prasadam, Prabhupada would let them sit there while he took prasadam. That was unusual. Prabhupada prasadam time he took by himself. I told you he would just take something from his plate, give it, now you can go. Hare Krishna, now you can go. He would send them out of the room and he honored prasadam by himself. But in the evening time, And while I was with Prabhupada, his appetite was very good, it seems, in the evening. And he said, you can make puris and sabji. So the first day we were there, I made puris and sabji, potato eggplant. It was 9 o'clock at night, Prabhupada's eating puris. Puris meant white flour, maida. There wasn't any atta. It was all maida, little ghee in the dough, some water, fried in ghee. Nice, hot, fresh, golden colored ghee. So I would prepare the sabji, then I cooked just one puri, put it on the plate, went into Prabhupada's room, put the plate down, and they're sitting there. That's okay. Then I go back, make another puri. I came in, bring the puri, put it down, run back out of the room, make a third puri, come in. I have to puff up just like chapatis. You're never flat. That's not possible. So I bring it in, put it down, offer obeisances. Each time, offer obeisances. And Prabhupada looked at me, he said, you don't have any sandash? So all Prabhupada had to do was say something like that to me, my whole world would just end right there. I say, no, Prabhupada, I said, I haven't had any time since we arrived. He said, oh, that's okay. He said, just bring a bowl of sugar. Yes, Prabhupada. So I'm back in the kitchen, got white sugar. That's what we had in the West, nice white crystallized sugar. Put it in the bowl, came back in with another puri. Prabhupada broke the puri, grabbed a piece, could hear it crunching, the sugar granules, and just popped it in his mouth, grabbed another piece, and then he looked, he said, Chini Puri, what is it, Chini Suri Sarapuri, Ladu Rasabali. He said, very nice combination. He said, puri and sugar. The other side of it were these two sannyasis, they didn't touch sugar. Like many from the West Coast in those days. Now we have this big vegan movement. Well, then it was health food movement. No sugar. Sugar is poison. As bad as heroin. Sugar. So bad for you. Just like so they didn't touch it. And here's Prabhupada in front of them, not just eating a sandash, he's literally eating sugar. The worst kind of sugar he's eating in front of them. And now they're looking at Prabhupada in total bewilderment because they wouldn't touch this stuff. But that's what Prabhupada was. That's what he was. He would find out. He would find out all your nonsense, your material attachments, and he would stomp on them. He would just make you see how foolish you were. Same thing happened another time in another place. No sugar. Prabhupada said, you don't have to eat sugar. He said, but Krishna likes sugar very much. He said, you have to feed him. He likes his sweets. You have to give him his sweets. You don't need to have any sweets. That's okay. So then the next day, I'm giving Prabhupada his massage. It's like noontime in the room, and Tushta Krishna is there. Siddha Swarup is there, and I'm massaging Prabhupada's head. One aside, Siddha Swarup gave Prabhupada big aluminum. They had these round aluminum containers with the Mysore sandalwood oil. It was precious back then in the 70s, very expensive at that time. He bought Prabhupada a big, maybe it was 500 mils or a liter, I don't know. And he brought it to Prabhupada right when I was starting massage. So I used it on his head. Then of course I had the mustard oil there for the rest of the body. And Siddha Swarup said, Prabhupada, please use the sandalwood oil for your whole body. And Prabhupada said, no. He said, it's mustard oil better. He said, Prabhupada, please use the sandalwood oil. Prabhupada used it. He had me use the sandalwood oil all on his entire body. And the next day he had a cold. And he said it was because of using that sandalwood, because sandalwood's cold. But he did it just to please his disciple. He knew what was going to happen, but he did it for Siddha. He did it for Siddha. So anyway, this day, there in New Zealand, Auckland, New Zealand, I'm massaging Prabhupada. And Tushta Krishna came to the door. The first temple president of Juhu Temple that didn't even exist yet. He came to the door where Prabhupada's getting massage. And he said, Prabhupada, there's a phone call for you from Bombay. And Prabhupada just sitting on the floor on the straw mat, his gamcha. I'm sitting behind him, same way. And he looked, he said, Sruta Kirti, you take it. So I go into the room. It's Bali Murdan on the phone. Of course, another person very connected with the Juhu project. All these things, how they fit together, it's very amazing. You know, you can see there's no accidents. Everything, it just fit together like puzzle pieces. So I get on the phone and I said, Prabhupada wanted me to take it, so he just told me very quickly. So then I come back, come to the doorway, and Prabhupada just staring at the doorway, waiting for me to find out what has happened. What has happened now that I'm getting a phone call, long distance phone call. These things didn't happen. You see, there's some 25,000 pictures of Srila Prabhupada. There's one picture of Prabhupada on the phone. That's how rare it was that Prabhupada was even on the telephone. Probably told the story, when Prabhupada got the phone in America. You know that story? You told that, mentioned that? Yeah, so easy, he said. But then he gets a phone call at midnight. How are you doing, Swamiji? Now? You're asking me at midnight how I'm doing? So that was the end of phones. No phones wherever Prabhupada went. He didn't want phones. And he didn't want us on the telephones making long distance phone calls. Telegrams, well, now everything's very different. But he's looking in the doorway, just waiting to see. So I came right to the doorway. I knew I couldn't. I just shouted out. I said, Prabhupada, Mr. Nair died. Prabhupada's sitting on the floor, just sitting there in a gamcha, his body glistening, the oil on his body, golden. Thank you, Krishna. And I'm looking. I have been with him now almost 5 months, but it still shocked me. And I knew Mr. Nair wasn't a good guy, but still to see Prabhupada so happy that someone had died, I thought was uncharacteristic of a Vaishnava. What to speak of such a pure soul as Srila Prabhupada. He said, thank you, Krishna, he said. And he said, Krishna. Later on, he wrote letters, and he always said, Lord Nrsingadev has killed him because he's protected his devotee. But at that moment, he said, Krishna, thank you, Krishna. So now I went, and I'm sitting behind him. And again, Prabhupada knows what's going on in my mind. He knows anything Krishna wants him to know, he said he knows. But he could certainly read minds. So he's reading my mind, and I'm a little confused that this Mr. Nair's died and Prabhupada's in ecstasy. And then he starts telling the story, this Mr. Nair. He said he was snake. Then he quoted Prahlad Maharaj. He said even a snake, or even a sadhu is happy when a snake or a scorpion is killed. He said, and he was a big snake. He said he gave so much trouble to the devotees, so much trouble to me. He said, I prayed to Krishna that he would kill him. He said, and Krishna has killed him. So now I'm into the story. So I say, guys, so Prabhupada said Krishna has killed him. So then I had to ask my silly question. I said, so Krishna has killed him. I said, does that mean he's liberated? He said, no. He said he wasn't that big of a demon. He said, Krishna didn't come personally. He said, Krishna kills you personally. He said, then you're liberated. He said, but he was not on that level. So he was just doomed. He was doomed, this Mr. Nair. And then he described more, he said. And he said, even my disciples, he said they were ready to give this property up. He said, but the deities were there. He said, I promised them to build them a very beautiful temple here. He said, so I could not. He said, he insulted Krishna. He insulted Radha. He said it was a big insult. He said, and last time I saw him, when I was in Bombay, and it's one of the reasons I didn't understand the depth of feelings that were there, because when Mr. Nair was there, they would have conversations. You know, it wasn't screaming. Prabhupada wasn't screaming at him about what was going on. They were talking. So I didn't understand so much. But Prabhupada said when he was last there, he said when I saw him in Bombay, he said he was limping. He said I saw his leg, his one leg, he said he had a limp. And then he would do, whenever Prabhupada would say, he was very strong, and Prabhupada would go like this. He did the same with me. He said, you have to massage me, you have to be strong. He would go. He said, and Mr. Nair, he was strong, man. He said, but I saw, and I knew at that time, Krishna was going to kill him. And he said, and Krishna has killed him. There's a one, let me see. In this book here, there's one letter. One letter I put in from Srila Prabhupada because it's my favorite letter. And in it, Prabhupada talks about Krishna will protect you. And in this letter, he tells Tushta Krishna, that same person, this letter was just before he went there. And Tushta was already just involved with Siddha Swarup, didn't want to be involved with ISKCON. So he said, try to keep a cool head under all circumstances. Always remember, Krishna will protect you in any case. I think that without you, the New Zealand affair will not go on. He didn't say you have to stay there and manage this temple, because he knew what was going to happen in the future. So he doesn't allow him to make more of an offense. It's already an offense we give up our service. But he doesn't allow his disciple to make a very big offense. He leaves it at a small offense, because also that's the process. So he says, I think that without you, the New Zealand affair will not go on. But now you're leaving there to live on some farm in Australia. These are Prabhupada's words. This is not a letter that was made up by his secretary. These are word for word how Prabhupada would speak, how he would choose his words. Some farm in Australia. You can see this is totally not what Prabhupada wants him to do. Of course, our serving Krishna is voluntary affair. And I saw this happen again and again with Srila Prabhupada. Even with his very, his most important disciples, GBCs, sometimes they just didn't want to do what Prabhupada asked them to do, told them to do. And then he would leave it at that. It's voluntary. So what can I say? If you think it's the best choice, I must agree. Otherwise, you might go away altogether. This is our spiritual master. This is Srila Prabhupada. How could we think of going away anywhere with such a compassionate, merciful, pure devotee? Anyway, we shall discuss in detail if I come there in the future. Then is very interesting. He asks about 7, 8 questions, and Prabhupada answered the questions as he asked them. He didn't go to what he considered was the most important question and answer that first. Prabhupada dealt with things just completely as it was asked. So now there's another question regarding your question in the letter of November 18th, because there were 2 letters. You have asked me if the spiritual master is ultimately Krishna. So the answer must be that if you think that way, then everyone is Krishna. So why we should think like this? Then Shaktavesh avatar means a living entity, but he is specially empowered. Not that he is Krishna, but on account of his exalted position, he is honored as much as Krishna. Not that he is Krishna. He says that again. That's Mayavadi. He acts in the position of Krishna, but he is not Krishna. He is very dear to Krishna. That's explained. Then he goes on, your next question, after leaving this realm, does the devotee remain forever with his spiritual master? The answer is yes. But I think you have gotten a mistaken idea in this connection. You speak of pure devotee, that he is Shaktavesh avatar, that we should obey him only. These things are the wrong idea. If anyone thinks like that, that a pure devotee should be obeyed and no one else, that means he's a nonsense. We advise everyone to address everyone as Prabhu. Prabhu means master. So how is the master should be disobeyed? Others, Tushta Krishna here is referring to Siddha. He saw Siddha was the only pure devotee. Outside of Prabhupada, there was Siddha Swarup, his gurus, Tushta Krishna's initial guru. Others, they are also pure devotees. All of my disciples are pure devotees. Anyone sincerely serving the spiritual master is a pure devotee. It may be Siddha Swarup or others. Siddha Swarup. This must be very clearly stated. So he's saying this is not just a letter to Tushta Krishna. This has to be clearly understood, he says. It is not only that your Siddha Swarup is a pure devotee and not others. Do not try to make a faction. See, this is how these factions develop. We start deciding, start looking at different levels, judging who's pure, who's impure. Do not try to make a faction. And that's what happened. It was already happening as this letter's going on. This faction was already there. Prabhupada saw it. He worked so hard to keep it from being a faction. It is not only that your Siddha Swarup is a pure devotee and not others. Do not try to make a faction. Siddha Swarup is a good soul, but others should not be misled. Anyone who is surrendered to the spiritual master is a pure devotee. It doesn't matter if Siddha Swarup or non-Siddha Swarup. Amongst ourselves, one should respect others as Prabhu, master, one another. As soon as we distinguish, here's a pure devotee, here's a non-pure devotee, what's it mean? It means you're nonsense. Prabhupada says that again. That means I am a nonsense. Why you only want to be in the spiritual sky with Siddha Swarup? Why not all? If Siddha Swarup can go, why not everyone? Siddha Swarup will go. You will go, saying to Tushta Krishna. Shaima Sundar will go. All others will go. We will have another ISKCON there. Of course, Mr. Nair must stay. So there. So don't become a Mr. Nair. And don't start seeing this one's pure devotee, this one I don't care what this one says, this one says. Otherwise, everything will fail. Prabhupada understood. And he still understands. And he's still here, trying to keep us from having so many factions. This faction, now we have so many factions. So, Hare Krishna. Do you have a question today, Mr. President? Anyone? Any questions? Daiva Shakti, Prabhu? Wait. I can't. The fan does create a little sound. And good, everyone can hear.
After Mr. Nair died,
yes,
then Mrs. Nair arranged to have the temple attacked, right, by the municipality?
Yes.
So she was actually more
More.
aggressive and more demoniac in some ways than her husband. Is that correct?
Yes, but Prabhupada dealt with her also very expertly, like mother. And I'm not sure the things he said, but he arranged and said he would see that she was taken very nice care of. That was his thing. But the temple was attacked, and of course some of our leading life members who were there at the time, they saved the deities. And the one devotee girl, what is her? Maita Healy. It wasn't brahmacharis, it wasn't these big men. It was this young lady, Maita Healy, went up and protected Radharasa Bahari on the altar, and she got bloodied because of it. They were out to create a lot of damage, and she actually put herself before the deities. So it was, as I've said, when I'm in Juhu, Prabhupada fought more for that temple than anywhere in the world. Very, very special place. Huh? And of course, Prabhupada attributed that was his office. He said that was his office, Juhu. This temple, of course. So these three places are very, very important for us to keep everything going very nicely for Srila Prabhupada, so that everyone can hear and benefit, get the benefits of just taking darshan of the deities, offering garland, little boga, whatever they do. You have, back in the day, you would say so many people chanted one round of japa. These are all very pleasing to Srila Prabhupada. So this is our business. And amongst ourselves, we have to respect one another. Prabhupada showed respect to me. It would always baffle me. One of the reasons I didn't go away, because you saw love from Srila Prabhupada. Just what he said. Right? What did he do? He started the love feast, and everything was based on love and trust. But first was the love. I always say that. First is love, then trust can be there. Otherwise, how can you trust someone if you're not sure of his intentions, his or her intentions? Yes?
When Lord Chaitanya was in South India, and all the people who came to see him, just by seeing Lord Chaitanya, would start jumping, dancing, feeling ecstatic. They were totally empowered to go back to their village to also give the same ecstasy. So it kind of reminded me when we were describing the problem of dancing and
yes,
glorifying Krishna in that way, how everyone became so ecstatic and enlivened by that. So it's a similarity in the Chaitanya Chapter, which is a nice description of that.
yes. And as I say, in India, that's the only gratification in any way that his disciples had, were his association, being able to see him and hear him. So when I came to India, and it was first here in Vrindavan, I was amazed how he went from just being in his room, from class on, no one saw Prabhupada. He was in his room, some management, things like that would go on. But rank and file, we say the rank and file devotees, there was no question you could go into Prabhupada's room, sit through a darshan. But when he came here, that was the mercy you got. That was the prasadam, that was the mercy that kept you going. And it might have to keep you going for 6 months. And it did, just that vision of the pure devotee. That's described also in Bhagavatam. Just seeing the face of the pure devotee, one can become Krishna conscious, just seeing that smile. Did you want to say something? Oh. All right, so we'll stop here. I have one more day tomorrow, then we all jump in the Purushottam month. Someone asked me today, I got a little letter, what did Prabhupada do during the month of Purushottam? It didn't exist. I never even heard the word except his disciple. He had a disciple named Purushottama. Otherwise, these things didn't exist. So whatever you want to do for your progress in Krishna consciousness, the best thing you can do is give it to others. You can lie down and eat off the ground, do anything. But if you really want to please Prabhupada, give this philosophy to others. Give Krishna to others. That would be the best thing you can do during the month of Purushottama, and the next month after that, during Kartik. Just give Krishna to everyone you meet. Then your life will be perfect. And you'll please Srila Prabhupada very, very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.